Hey, welcome to the continuing winemaker series here at the Wine of the Month Club, and we are really excited to have Zak, commonly known as Zak, around the winery, Miller from Domaine Carneros, and just to highlight that we had the pleasure. Was it May? I think we were up there.
Yeah,
Something like that a few months ago.
it was a couple months
We had a
ago,
chance to visit the winery and taste some champagne and have a great chat with Zak, commonly known as Zak at the time, and so we came down this week to have a chat with us, taste some wines. You'll also hear him on the podcast. So welcome.
Thanks, Paul. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Now I think we discussed this a little bit at the winery, but your personal history to get into this crazy business. What was that path?
It was a little unorthodox.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
I studied forestry at Virginia Tech. And bounced around the country a little bit, and it was in the end my wife who wanted to come to Napa, and so I came to help her support her dream and kind of fell into winemaking after the fact.
So you wanted to come to Napa. So where were you living then?
We were living in Gainesville, Florida.
Really? Wait a minute. Wait, hold on here a second. Gainesville, Florida, forestry as a major.
Yeah.
And she
said, well, I had a college roommate that lived in Chico. My college roommate, roommate from college lived in Chico. And so we came to visit him and did the whole tourist blip in Napa. And she decided that was what she wanted to do. So,
wow.
So out we came. And, it turns out that there's a lot of correlation between our backgrounds and winemaking. And then we just did what we had to do and learn from a lot of people. She went back to school. My path was more to travel around the world and learn from different winemakers. I did harvest in New Zealand and in Chile.
Good work if you can get it, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Landed at Domaine Carneros in 2008 and have been working with Eileen ever since.
So New Zealand and where else?
Chile.
So there are some sparklings from Chile, New Zealand. I can't even tell if I've ever tasted a sparkling wine from Chile, from New Zealand. So did you make sparkling wine?
I did. I was making still wine, a focus on Pinot Noir from my early days. And it wasn't until Domaine Carneros that I got into sparkling wine.
Wow, that's
opened a whole new world for me. New application of Chardonnay, obviously, and a new application of Pinot Noir. And so it's a good combination.
Because even Pinot in Chile is pretty rare. We've only just started sort of having character of Pinot Noir, though I had Piero Incisa here from Argentina who makes a biodynamic Pinot Noir. It's fabulous, and I think he's probably like one of the first in Argentina to even try that. So you were making obviously Bordeaux varietals down there mostly.
Yeah, it's mostly Merlot.
Yeah.
Sometimes they call it Carmenere, but it's Merlot.
Yeah, well, that whole argument with the Bordeaux people. But in New Zealand, you're probably making Sauvignon Blanc and Pinot Noir.
Yeah, it was Sauvignon Blanc. Specifically, I was in Marlborough.
Yeah, you were.
So that's Sauvy country.
I love the idea of the north tip of the South Island versus the south tip of the North Island.
Yeah,
that always confuses people.
Exactly. We were in the north part of the South Island.
And
exactly.
Such typical and such different wines from those regions.
Yeah, right? Definitely. And then you go in the south part of the South Island, and you're into Pinot country.
Really? Okay. Yeah. So dramatically different wines. So now you did that stint, and given that sparkling wine is so much different in its production and the way you pick the grapes and when you pick the grapes, and what attracted you to that? Just there was a job opening and you took it, or
I think initially, but I really enjoyed the process. Again, I wasn't really not a huge fan of the California Chardonnay, and as such, I didn't really enjoy making Chardonnay.
Yeah, right.
And so it was a new application of Chardonnay in a Blanc de Blanc that I really enjoyed, and so that was exciting. And it's just a long-term process that's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And it's a different, the blending is a different experience, and so it was just a new experience that I really took to, and turned out I was halfway decent at.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, sounds like it. So when we make sparkling wine, And there's a couple of methodologies. There's Charmat, there's method Champenois, method traditionnel, and then there's the transfer method, right? That's still around.
Yeah, the transfer method. That would still be around,
yeah,
I think.
I haven't heard about it much lately,
Right.
but so the difference is, and I'm going to say this for the folks that don't know the difference. Charmat's done in a big tank. Is that generally CO2 infused, or is it just trapped CO2 as well?
It's usually infused. It's a pressure tank.
Yeah, so just throw it in there and it absorbs it.
Yeah.
As where...
Like making Coke.
Yeah,
Coca-Cola,
right. Exact same difference. Right?
Yeah.
Well, I guess I suppose then if I have my... what do they call that thing you can buy at the
house?
Throw some white wine in there and just inject it, and I've got myself...
Yeah, the Soda Stream.
Yeah, right, Soda Stream. I make my own champagne. Who needs to spend all this
money? Yeah, I wouldn't recommend it, but you could try that.
That'd be really interesting, actually. And we all tried to make wine as a kid, right? Take some orange juice and throw some mom's yeast in it and see what happens, right? So the other methodology, this method Champenois, which is also called method traditionnel, and that is the bubbles are coming from inside the bottle from the fermentation, and fermentation is producing CO2 and changing the sugar to alcohol, so the bubbles get trapped in there.
Correct.
Right? But you also have this, and we talked about this a little bit, whereas you would normally filter a wine or necessarily fine a wine, and some people don't even do that anymore, but you have yeast cells being spent and accumulating at now, since you have them. I don't want to tip this over.
Right.
Since you have them here, here's a bottle of Brut Zero. Since you have them in a riddle rack, right? Or is it another methodology now?
No, they're in a, if you did it by hand, the old school way, it would be in the riddling rack. But now they're in the gyro pallet, the riddling cage.
I see.
504 bottles per cage. Yeah, it does it 4 days. Nobody gets hurt.
Right, yeah. So the old days, just so people know, and you may see these at antique stores. I have one at my home, which are these 4-foot by 8-foot planks, and they have diagonal holes drilled through them, so the bottle would stay suspended like this. But that's because we want all the spent yeast cells from the fermentation to accumulate at the bottom, at the neck.
Correct.
Right. So in today's methodologies, now you're still freezing the...
Yeah, everything's the same. It's just the process of getting all the sediment, the expired yeast cells into the neck has just been expedited with technology and science. So, whereas a riddling rack is probably doing it by hand, might depend, but you're probably looking at 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah. Oh, really? It takes... Oh, I see.
Yeah, you're 4 days in the cage.
So
it goes overnight. It goes 24/7. It's you can set it on the weekend. Come back Monday and you're ready to roll.
Yeah, this is great. Right? Instead of a quarter a turn a day for whatever.
Exactly. Right? Yeah. So
I wonder if that was a coveted job back in the day.
It may have
the
been.
Riddler, the Batman Riddler.
Yeah.
So we riddle the wine, and we now have these spent seeds, and we freeze the plug.
Yeah. So at that point, it's all pretty much the same. You put it neck down in a negative 20-degree glycol bath. It flash freezes it.
Negative 20.
Super cold. Yes. Yeah. And then you have all your solids trapped in the neck in a plug. You can turn it right side up, and the ice plug stays. Defies gravity, if you will. Then when you pop the cap, you have 6 to 7 bar of pressure in the bottle, so that's in excess of 100 pounds per square inch.
Wow.
They're little bombs. So when you pop the cap, you have a lot of pressure. It blows the plug out. Your resulting bottle is clean.
Just by pure nature.
Yeah.
Physics, it takes care of itself.
Exactly.
Right? Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then you're left with a dosage. You've got to put some stuff back in to make sure. So how much of this volume is missing when you do that?
You'd probably be somewhere, maybe about where it is, maybe a little higher.
Yeah.
A little bit, not too much. The dosage usually covers the bulk of the refill, and then you just top off the last, few millimeters, whatever you need.
So the dosage now is where you adjust the dryness of the wine.
Correct.
And is that a neutral spirit you're putting in there, or?
Well, it's a liqueur that we make from itself. So for us, there's a lot of different ways to do it, but for us, we will reserve some of that vintage wine, hold it back. We'll make a liqueur out of that wine and add it back. Right. So the dosage is, in essence,
okay. So in the liqueur is a percentage of sugar that you're going to add to it.
Correct.
Adjust the stability of it. In somewhere, I don't know, what, 7 grams to 10 grams, or
well, Brut by definition is under 15 grams.
I see,
but that's pretty sweet in today's palate, and so our Brut is going to run in the 9 grams per liter range. So each vintage will taste separately and vary, but we're not gonna jump around 2 or 3 grams vintage to vintage. It's a quarter gram difference, half gram at most.
So what's fascinating to me too, folks, is that it says Domaine Carneros by Tétanger. Tétanger, of course, is a very famous family-owned house, a champagne house is it in Aix or Reims?
They're in Reims, and they have properties in Epernay and around.
We've talked about this briefly. We had Clovis Tétanger in here as a character named after the first king of France, and we had a great conversation about champagne. We didn't talk about this earlier, but one of the things that he's thought in all champagne houses, we've had Bollinger in here as well. Like, we want people to drink champagne as part of their regular regimen, right?
Yeah,
it should be part of the regular regimen.
Yeah, it's not just for New Year's anymore.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's not just for celebrations, even though it's still good for that.
Oh
right?
Yeah,
but it's got its character, it's got its place, it's got its different styles, and you can pair food with it, appetizers with it, all the rest of it, right?
Yeah, it goes with any meal of the day, beginning of the day, end of the day. I like to say there's 2 things that sparkling wine doesn't go with, and that's toothpaste and coffee. Outside of that, the world is your oyster.
Like I tease a lot of winemakers that come in here. Yeah, sorry, I just had a couple of sweet tarts. Hope you don't mind. So tell us about this Brut.
Okay, this is our 2015 vintage Brut, and we vintage date in accordance with the French labeling law, which is a minimum of 36 months in the bottle. Wow. And so we're going to age this properly. It's part homage to Tétanger, and part just because it's a quality stamp that we believe in.
So vintage, which is interesting because that's most sparkling wines that you see on the shelf, Veuve Clicquot, and the rest of them are all typically non-vintage wines, which I get. Not that I want to disparage Veuve Clicquot, it's fine champagne, but it's like, come on, let's taste. I mean, there's such a variety in the character of champagne, as there is in Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, Cabernet, whatever you want, that we should taste these things and figure out the differences. And one of the questions I asked you was about, do you get the terroir? And you said you're in clay. From the various blocks of Chardonnay and Pinot Noir in your vineyard.
Yeah, I think Carneros is a very distinctive. Both the soil type is very different than the surrounding areas, as well as the climate. We have the cooling effect coming in from the San Pablo Bay, and it shuts down photosynthesis at night. Yet we have the warm grow days, so it's perfect. Suited for Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, and so as such, it's perfectly suited for us to be there making sparkling.
Now, France Champagne is just northeast a little bit of Burgundy, France, about a 3-hour drive. Same grapes. I remember at the winery seeing your irrigation. Is it a lake? Pond.
Yeah, retention pond.
Lake would be good for you. Now is that the irrigation?
Yeah.
Supply?
Yeah.
And do you irrigate all the time?
In the summer, we will. Summer, yeah.
I remember the question that everybody was asking that day. Are the rains going to cause a problem for the grapes? I'm like, no, it's not.
No, that's fine. Winter and spring rains is what we want. One, it helps to fill up our reservoirs, and 2, it gives the vines some much needed water.
So what would happen in Carneros if you didn't irrigate?
The vines would just die.
There's just not enough.
Yeah. You might make it a vintage with some seriously stressed vines, and then they croak the next
sparkling
year.
Sauterne of some kind.
Yeah, exactly. It's not recommended.
Well, the reason I ask that is because, and I disagree with the premise, but this term natural wine is kind of floating around, and it's kind of frustrating everybody in the industry. And some people are professing that dry farmed wines are more natural than non-dry irrigated farms. And I'm thinking, I don't understand what's unnatural about watering a plant, right? I mean,
right.
So that's why I
Water's
asked
pretty natural. Dry farming you can do in certain areas. In an already stressed soil with limited water resources and limited availability to the roots due to the clay loam nature, it just wouldn't work. So
we were talking about that too, the organic side of this, and you were an organic farm, which has its certifications and its requirements, and you guys converted back to but you went to sustainable. Now, these are two different things entirely. Yes. Sustainable is sort of a holistic approach, right, to the winery management, and organic is more specific to the farming of the grapes. But tell us why you had to switch to sustainable from organic.
Well, organic is really what you can add and what you can't add, and there was nothing wrong with it. I think for a while we were happy with organic, and it'll work for many wineries. I don't want to come across as organic as bad in any way, but it just wasn't right for us in our location. Again, we go back to our clay soils. With organic vineyard management, you're doing many more passes on the tractor, compacting those soils even more.
Right.
And in the end, it was detrimental to our root systems, which are already under a tremendous amount of stress. We don't need to add more to that environment. And so that was one of the big ones. And then it's also difficult to farm organic or even biodynamic in close proximity to neighbors who are not farming that way. In our location, we're surrounded on all sides. We have a main road that goes by us. Grape trucks are coming by all the time, and pests and diseases don't adhere to property lines. And so it was multifaceted, and it's certainly right for some wineries. It just wasn't right for us. And so the sustainable looks at the entire winery approach, and we were able to kind of look at our whole system and really find something that worked for us, that worked for the vines. At the end of the day, we're a grower producer, and we need good quality grapes, and so we have to take care of the vines.
It's a fabulous place, folks, if you get a chance to go. And now, what's that, Highway 12 or 29?
12/121.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So that's the one that links Napa with Sonoma, and you have to go by Domaine Carneros to get from one to the other, and that's how we landed there. And it's a very French architecture. You have a beautiful patio with sort of a solarium where you can sit and enjoy some charcuterie and some nuts and taste through a flight of sparkling wines, as well as some very interesting still wines, which we'll taste in a second. Tell us about this rosé now.
Okay, this rosé, 59% Pinot Noir, 41% Chardonnay. This rosé, I think, really our hallmark on the rosé is that we macerate some of the Pinot Noir on the skins. A little bit of the Pinot Noir, we leave the juice in contact with the skins for a few days and get some color. Then we pull it off and ferment it just like we would any of our other Chardonnay or Pinot Noir.
But you're getting not only the extraction of the color, which is giving you this nice salmon color or copper, but you're getting some depth in this. There's a lot about rosé. I think some of the misconceptions about rosé in general are that they're just fluffy wines, and it's not really true. Yeah. You can get some pretty interesting complexity out of that maceration from the Pinot Noir.
Yeah, and you stay, true to the delicate aromatics as well. Because the other option, you can be really frou-frou and sweet, or you can add Pinot Noir to get your color, and you can, be really going down that Pinot road, and it kind of overwhelms the wine. And with this one, we're making, this is 9.5 grams per liter. It's a true Brut. It's intended to be a serious rosé, but it also has that, the rose petal, that strawberry, peach, and that we get by not coming over the top with the Pinot.
Well, and we were talking about this earlier. The Tétanger is known, at least in its own circles in Champagne, as a Chardonnay forward sparkling wine. And as opposed to its neighbors using, 60-40 Pinot Noir to Chardonnay. So they kind of flip it. So this, Le Rêve, the Dream.
Yeah.
And this is 2011, and this is the current vintage, the current release.
We just switched to the 12 at the winery. Full disclosure.
But just in case somebody's confused, but that's, I mean, if I'm walking down the aisles and I haven't watched this video, and I see a 2011 anything, my first impression as a consumer is like, this is too old, right?
Yeah.
I mean, right? We don't see that a lot.
Right.
But in this case, it's virtually almost the current vintage, and it's only going to be more complex from there.
Correct. Yeah, it's just starting its journey at this point. And with all sparkling wine, a well-made, traditional method sparkling wine is going to get better with age. Even the Brut, at 2011, it's just going to be better. So age in sparkling wine is counterintuitive to what you think about in still wine. And so any of them will get better with age, but a well-made Blanc de Blanc is going to take, we age this in the bottle 6 to 7 years as a minimum, and then release it, and it's going to continue to develop for another 10.
It's gorgeous.
If you have the patience.
Well, just for the consumer's information, I won't mention the brand. However, Nixon's first trip to China, historic trip, he took a Blanc de Blanc with him. I guess I don't know if they care, because they don't really care for champagne over there that much. It's very interesting. I asked a lot of questions to the winemakers, and there's this movement in China that's they're so in such a beginning cycle of appreciation for wine and fine liquor that they actually have determined that Bordeaux is no longer what they're seeking, and they're looking for other things, and now whiskey's become this huge thing, bourbons as well. Yeah, it's really pretty interesting. And I had a guy cold call me, I swear, 2 days ago, Chinese guy, never heard of him, don't know who he is. He walks in with 5 photographs of high-end scotches, Glenfiddich, and ones I didn't even recognize, including a series of Game of Thrones whiskey. And he goes, I need pallets of this.
Oh my goodness.
I'm like, pallets? How am I supposed to get pallets of this? And I said, well, I'll find it for you. I can probably find it, but I don't know why he decided to show. Maybe he saw my sign on the freeway. I don't know.
Yeah, there you
go.
go.
Call me for that, right?
Something you're doing in marketing is right.
Yeah, something's right. This is something I've always wondered about with sparkling houses. You're growing Chardonnay, you're growing Pinot Noir, maybe some Pinot Meunier, but making still wines then is just not a different process completely. And not forget about the fermentation, but what about the ripeness of the grapes when you pick them?
Yeah, I mean, you need to designate whether it's going sparkling or still at essentially a pruning, and so you're gonna prune them differently. You're gonna farm them differently, and to the end point, you're gonna pick them differently. Mm-hmm. So, but you're growing it anyway, and in our case, we've had some time to develop which blocks would be more suited to sparkling and which blocks might be more suited to still. And so we started, Pinot Noir started in the early 90s for us.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. It's been around for a while. It was, it's kind of grown over the years, and now, we distribute our estate Pinot Noir, which is...
So I haven't seen this around, but I tasted it when we were with you, mm-hmm. as well as you have a on-premise Pinot that's served at the winery, which was very good. But this, what I find fascinating about this, Carneros links Napa and Sonoma, so to speak. So I'm a huge fan of Russian River Pinot Noirs. I think they're meaty and they express the character of the area. I'm not overly excited about Napa Pinot Noirs necessarily. This is totally different from both. Mm-hmm. And I'm getting this wonderful middle character of fruit and complexity, but I'm also getting sort of a Burgundian nuance to it, sort of a femininity to it at the end, and I'm just fascinated by this. It's really spectacular wine.
Yeah, I mean, and it's part of what we get in Carneros. We have very warm grow days, so you're going to have a little bit more fruit expression than the cooler climates, but we do shut down at night, and it's the one reason that Pinot Noir and Chardonnay grow so well there. And it's very different than any other area. And, you know, I think the biggest fallacy in winemaking is trying to make a wine from a different area. You make what you have. That's the easiest way. And so this is what we have. It's intended to be an expression of Carneros. You know, it enters with some raspberry black cherry, and then we get that like that Carneros baking spice is how I like to identify in the middle. It's just a
Carneros baking spice.
Yeah,
I like
and
that.
it's consistent across our still Pinot Noirs, and then a little bit of earthiness, like you were alluding to, and then you know a nice long finish. 100% French oak, 30% new, enough to support it and carry it and not overwhelm it.
And this is in the marketplace, this particular
correct.
bottle.
Yeah, this is 2016.
16?
Yeah, that's
our super wine.
That's our current.
I have that Pinot Noir club now. I'm starting a couple other clubs. We're starting I'm going to call it the Pure Wine Club, which is going to sort of dabble in the sustainable, so that would work here, biodynamic, organic side of things. Mm-hmm. And so, only thing I didn't notice at the winery was the guest quarters.
That we don't have, unfortunately.
I guess that ends the conversation on that. Well, it's been quite a pleasure having you here, Zach, and I appreciate the hospitality we had when we were up, and we'll probably be up again in the near future. I've got a lot of work to do up there, but fascinating conversation, and the wine is great. I just appreciate you coming in, and hope you have a successful trip down here. When are you going back?
Well, I'm leaving LA tonight.
Oh,
I won't get home until this weekend.
Yeah. Oh,
really? On the rest of the country tour.
Heading
to Chicago. Yeah.
Chicago. Great.
But thanks for having me.
You're
It's
welcome.
been a pleasure.
Cheers.
Cheers.